In Part 5, trumpets 1 through 6 of the 7th seal were looked at. In this part, the entirety of the 7th trumpet will be looked at, which covers from the end of Revelation 11 to the end of Revelation 14. The 7th trumpet is the vengeance on Midian, where Phinehas took the vessels of the sanctuary, which included the Ark of the Covenant, and trumpets for the alarms in Numbers 31. In Revelation 11 verse 15, the loud voices in heaven can be seen as occurring beyond the Jordan, before the Israelites crossed the Jordan. Verses 17 through 18 refer to the things given and rewards in Numbers 31 verses 48 through 54. The rewards also include the inheritance given to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh on the east side of the Jordan in Numbers 32. In Revelation 11 verse 18, the phrase, "for destroying the destroyers of the earth," can be seen as a reference to those who sought to destroy God's people, since the word earth prophetically refers to a people made righteous by God through the meaning of eretz, the Hebrew word for earth, as in Genesis 1. This would refer to the Midianites who harassed the people of Israel, causing them to yoke themselves to other gods, specifically Baal. The opening of the temple in heaven and the Ark of his covenant being seen in the temple in verse 19 refers to the Messiah being seen in his glorified resurrected body. He is the Ark of the Covenant and the temple of God that is in heaven, not made by the hands of man. With respect to the law, this is a reference to the succession of Moses by Joshua, who is the conquering leader that takes Israel into the Promised Land. Moses represents the Messiah coming as the Son of Man to deliver his people from the slavery of sin. Joshua represents the Messiah coming as the conquering king who has conquered death and the grave to lead his people to the Promised Land, which is the new heaven and new earth. Joshua's faithfulness in Numbers 13 through 14 that then leads to him not dying in the wilderness where the rest of the generation died, other than Caleb, is a picture of conquering death and the grave. Revelation chapters 12 through 14 align with Numbers 33 and Deuteronomy as a whole, which is a retelling of Israel's journey from Egypt to the plains of Moab and the vengeance on Midian that then leads into the events of the book of Joshua. Therefore, with that in mind, Revelation 12 begins with echoing the events in the book of Exodus. In verse 1, it mentions a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. Israel is the woman, Ezekiel 16, verses 10 through 13. Ephraim is the sun, Manasseh is the moon, Genesis 48, verses 17 through 20, with respect to Genesis 1, verses 14 through 19. In verse 2, it mentions that the woman is pregnant and crying out in birth pains. This refers to Exodus 2, verses 23 through 25, where it says, God knew. God knew it was time to deliver. In verse 3, it mentions that a great red dragon appeared with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on the 7 heads. The great red dragon is Egypt. In Job 26, verse 13, it says, his hand pierced the fleeing serpent. In Isaiah 27, verse 1, it mentions the Leviathan as the fleeing serpent, the twisting serpent. Isaiah 30, verse 7 says that Egypt's help is worthless and empty, therefore I have called her Rahab who sits still. Compare with Revelation 17 showing Rahab and the scarlet beast as one. Isaiah 51 verse 9 says, was it not you who cut Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon? Jeremiah 46 verses 20 through 22 says, a beautiful heifer is Egypt, she makes a sound like a serpent gliding away. In Ezekiel 29 verse 3 it says, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon. In Ezekiel 32 verse 2 it says, you consider yourself a lion of the nations, but you are like a dragon in the seas. Egypt is equated to the dragon in Ezekiel 29 verse 3. Egypt is equated to Rahab, Isaiah 30 verse 7. The dragon is equated to Rahab, Isaiah 51 verse 9. In Judges 19 verses 29 through 30 it says, and when he entered his house, he took a knife, and taking hold of his concubine he divided her, limb by limb, into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And all who saw it said, such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak. In Revelation 12 verse 4 it says, his tail swept down a third of the stars and cast them to the earth. In Exodus 4 verse 31 it says, and the people believed, and when they had heard that Yahuwah had visited the people of Israel, and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. In Exodus 5 verses 15 through 21 it says, then the foremen of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, you are idle, you are idle. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to Yahuwah. Go now and work. No straw will be given you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. The foremen of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them, as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, Yahuwah look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Exodus 6 verses 1 through 9 says, but Yahuwah said to Moses, now you shall see what I shall do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yahuwah. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, as God Almighty. But by my name Yahuwah I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am Yahuwah, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am Yahuwah. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses, because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. In Revelation 12 verse 4 it also says, And the dragon stood before the woman, who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child he might devour it. In Exodus 6 verses 14 through 30 we have the genealogy of Moses and Aaron. In Exodus 1 verses 15 through 22 it says, Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, When you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, Why have you done this and let the male children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. In Revelation 12 verses 5 through 6 it mentions, She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. As it relates to the male child who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, Exodus 7 verse 1 says, See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, where Moses is being placed above Pharaoh. This is also a reference to the Messiah, but is also part of the promise to the church in Thyatira to those who conquer. The leaving of Egypt to the edge of the wilderness is an echo of Exodus 14 verse 2, which is restated in Numbers 33 verses 6 through 7. As it relates to the 1,260 days, this is explicitly stated in the text as relating to the time in the wilderness, just as was mentioned when looking at Revelation 11 and the previous part of this series. In Revelation 11, the mention of 42 months, 1,260 days, and the phrase time, times, and half a time are with respect to echoing the statements at the end of the second census in Numbers 26, that is taken towards the end of the time in the wilderness, focusing on Joshua and Caleb being the only ones who will enter the promised land from those of the disobedient generation because of their witness in Numbers 13 through 14. They represent the two witnesses of Revelation 11 with respect to the parallel echo structure, which are spirit and truth, with Caleb representing the spirit and Joshua representing the truth. In Revelation 12, the mention of 1,260 days and phrase time, times, and half a time is with respect to echoing Numbers 33, which is a retelling of the journey from the leaving of Egypt to the plains of Moab. In Revelation 12 verses 7 through 12, it mentions, Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. This refers to the plagues upon Egypt and Moses' song in Exodus 15, that speaks of the events of Exodus 7 through 14 in terms of war, where Michael means, who is like God, stated in verse 11, emphasizing the power of God. The accusations that are referred to in Revelation are the accusations of idleness because they wanted to go serve God in Exodus 1 verses 8 through 14, Exodus 5 verses 4 through 9, and Exodus 5 verses 15 through 18. In Revelation 12 verse 13 it says, And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. In Exodus 14 verses 5 through 9 it says, When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people, and they said, What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. And Yahuwah strengthened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel, while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen, and his army, and overtook them and camped at the sea, by Pi-hahiroth, in front of Baal-Zephon. In Revelation 12 verse 14 it says, But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time, times, and half a time. In Exodus 14 verses 15 through 22 it says, Yahuwah said to Moses, Why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will strengthen the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they shall go in after them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, his chariots and his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahuwah, when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the angel of God who was going before the host of Israel moved, and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahuwah drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. In Revelation 12 verse 15 it says, "The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood." In Exodus 14 verse 23 it says, "The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen." It is described as a river because it is a narrow path between the walls of water that the Egyptians tried to go through as the Israelites did. In Revelation 12 verse 16 it says, "But the earth came to the help of the woman and opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth." In Exodus 14 verses 24 through 29 it says, "And in the morning watch Yahuwah in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, 'Let us flee from before Israel, for Yahuwah fights for them against the Egyptians.' Then Yahuwah said to Moses, 'Stretch out your hand over the sea that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen.' So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled into it, Yahuwah threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Of all the host of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left." In Revelation 12 verse 17 it says, "Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Yahushua." Leading into Revelation 13, this is a reference to Exodus 17 verses 8 through 16, after what occurs in Exodus 15 verse 22 through 16 verse 36. In Exodus 15 verse 26 it says, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of Yahuwah your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes." The bread from heaven is a foreshadow of the Messiah. An omer of the bread from heaven was kept in a jar before Yahuwah, referring to the commandments of God and holding to the testimony of Yahushua. At the end of Revelation 12, sometimes included in the beginning of Revelation 13, it says, "And he stood on the sand of the sea." This refers to Exodus 14 verses 30 through 31, where Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. In Revelation 13, the first beast is covered in verses 1 through 10. The first beast is described in the following way: a beast like a leopard, with feet like a bear, and a mouth like a lion. It had blasphemous names on its heads. It had 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns on the horns. The dragon gives his power, his throne, and great authority to this beast. One head had a mortal wound that was healed. When considering that the dragon of Revelation 12 and the first beast of Revelation 13 both have 7 heads and 10 horns, like the scarlet beast in Revelation 17, the moving of the crowns from the heads in Revelation 12 to the horns in Revelation 13 is the visual description of the dragon giving his power, throne, and great authority to the first beast. And this is because the great red dragon is Egypt, and Egypt is destroyed in Revelation 12, which is a retelling of the Exodus story. The first beast of Revelation 13 is the beast that Israel contends with during their journey in the wilderness that acts on behalf of Satan, seeking to oppress and destroy Israel just as Egypt did. In Numbers chapters 21 through 25 and chapter 31, the following are the 7 heads of the Revelation 13 beasts that Israel contends with during their journey in the wilderness that acts on behalf of Satan. The first is the Amalekites. The second is the Canaanite king of Arad. The third is Hamosh of Moab, also known as Baal of Peor, Numbers 25, and Psalm 106 verse 28. This is the head that was wounded and lived. The fourth is Sihon, king of the Amorites. The fifth is Og of Bashan, an Amorite and last of the Rephaim. The sixth is Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab. The seventh is Midian, having 5 kings. The mention of blasphemous names on the heads could be seen as referring to the descendants of the Nephilim from Genesis 6 that make up the Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. However, in this context, the blasphemy is related to those who opposed Yahuwah and were destroyed by Yahuwah through Israel. As listed, there are a total of 7 heads, named, with 10 kings, referring to the crowns. To expand upon this for a moment by applying what is said in Revelation 17 verses 9 through 14, about the 8th being one of the 7, this has contextual reference to the 2 Amorites, which are who Joshua fights after crossing the Jordan. It is also worth noting that there are 8 groups mentioned in Joshua 24 verse 11, the leaders of Jericho, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The 2 kings of the Amorites that are referred to as the hornet, sent by Yahuwah in Joshua 24 verse 12, refers back to Exodus 23 verses 28 through 30, and they are Sihon and Og as it relates to the book of Numbers, and Adonai-Zedek and Jabin and Joshua 10 through 11, since they are the two main rulers of Canaan that assembled the largest armies against Joshua, and were brought out into the hand of Joshua. The same occurred under Moses with respect to Sihon and Og. In Revelation 13 verse 8 it says, "And all who dwell on earth will worship it, the first beast, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain." Those whose names had not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life is a reference to the Nephilim. The Nephilim are first mentioned in Genesis 6 as the offspring of the union between the sons of God, referring to angels, and daughters of men, procreating what looks like human, but is not the same as the image of God, which is mankind, and the offspring of the union between two image bearers of God. Simply put, this means that according to Revelation and the law, the Nephilim were never completely destroyed. Those who are image bearers of God have their names recorded in the book of life by default and are blotted out. Revelation 13 verse 10 is a reference to Numbers 14 verses 39 through 45, where Israelites are pursued by Amalekites and Canaanites to Hormah. Hormah is mentioned as a place of captivity for Israelites taken in Numbers 21 verses 1 through 3 by the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negeb. These captives are liberated after a vow to God is made in Numbers 21. Hormah means destruction. The second beast of Revelation 13 has two horns like a lamb, speaks like a dragon, and has the authority of the first beast and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. This has relevance to Jeremiah 44. In Numbers chapters 22 through 24, Balaam the son of Beor is summoned by Balak king of Moab. He advises Balak on how to cause Israel to stumble, as stated in Revelation 2 verse 14. This stumbling manifested in the eating of food sacrificed to idols, and adultery according to Numbers 25 verses 6 through 9, where a Simeonite brings a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of everyone. They are killed by Phinehas and the plague stops. The sacrifice to idols that is relevant to the statement in Revelation 13 of making the inhabitants of the earth worship the first beast is with regard to the Moabite god Hamosh, also called Baal Peor. The reason this is the head that was wounded and lived is because this is the same false god that the Israelites fell into idolatry with later on. The number 666 or 666 has relevance to the years under a foreign power since the exile of Judah to the destruction of the Second Temple. The connection to the second beast, referring to Balaam, is that Balaam taught Balak how to seduce Israel to worship a foreign god. This is prophesied by God in Deuteronomy 31 verse 16, and in the Song of Witness told to Moses by God to teach Israel as a witness against them that is recorded in Deuteronomy 32. Therefore, taking the mark of the beast or the number of his name is likened to the worship of the ruling power that has authority over you granted to them by God while we are in the wilderness or exile. 666 or 666 is also the talents of gold that Solomon received each year, 1 Kings 10 verse 14 and 2 Chronicles 9 verse 13. Solomon's reign was a time of peace in contrast to his father David, who was a man of war. Solomon's reign was supposed to foreshadow the reign of the Son of God on earth, but Solomon chased after other gods due to his wives and instead is a foreshadow of the reign of the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist. In connection with Nero, the Roman emperor, in Greek, Nero's name is Neron Kaiser, and when spelled in Hebrew it is Nun, Resh, Vav, Nun, Kaf, Samek, Resh, which totals to 666 when the values of each letter are summed up. N equals 50, R equals 200, O equals 6, Q equals 100, and S equals 60. In Latin, Nero's name is Nero Kaiser, dropping the last N from the Greek spelling. In Hebrew, the last Nun is dropped, while the spelling of Kaiser remains the same. The sum total is 616. Some manuscripts of the Book of Revelation, such as Papyrus 115 and Codex Ephraemi Rescriptus, state the number of the beast as 616. This variance is explained by the transliteration of an individual's name into two different languages. Applying the same method yields different numerical results, 666 and 616, but both point toward the same individual, highlighting the position of the individual, which was the Emperor of Rome, where Rome is the head of the beast. The image of the beast is man, relating to self-worship, chasing self-madeness, that began in Genesis 3 verse 5, when the serpent told Eve she would be like God. In Revelation 13 verse 17 it says, "So that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name." In Revelation 15 verse 2 it says, "A sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of his name." The phrase, "number of names" is used in Numbers 1 in reference to all Israel when taking the first census, but not in Numbers 26. To conquer the beast and its image and the number of his name is to conquer the worship of man during our time in the wilderness, exile, this life. In Revelation 14, the 144,000 are mentioned. This is the total from Revelation 7. It is referencing the same groups since Revelation chapters 12 through 14 is a repeating of events aligned with Numbers 33 and the whole of Deuteronomy from the Exodus up to the vengeance on Midian. The reason they are referred to as virgins is because of not serving other gods. They have been redeemed from the earth because they were children in Numbers 13 through 14. They were not numbered in the census of Numbers 1 because they were under the age of 20 and therefore did not receive the punishment of dying in the wilderness for unfaithfulness. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes because this is echoing the generation that grew up in the wilderness, watching their parents die in the wilderness while they kept following Moses and then eventually Joshua. There are no lies in their mouth, and they are blameless because this is echoing the fact that they were children at the time of the death sentence in Numbers 14. This is key to understanding what the Messiah meant when he said, "Let the children come to me, do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God." He is drawing attention to the events of the wilderness years, where it was the children who ended up going into the promised land, not the same generation that left Egypt and then didn't obey, forsaking their faith, when it came time to go take the land in Numbers chapters 13 through 14. As it relates to the three messages in Revelation 14, the first message echoes Deuteronomy 31 verses 9 through 13. The eternal gospel is the law, the word made flesh. The second message echoes Deuteronomy 31 verses 16 through 18. Babylon is referring to Israel as explicitly stated later in Revelation 17. Fallen is Babylon refers to the devouring that will occur when Israel rises to go serve other gods, as also stated in Revelation 17. The third message echoes Deuteronomy 31 verses 19 through 22. This is the command to write the Song of Witness in Deuteronomy 32. Revelation 14 verse 13 echoes Deuteronomy 33, Moses' blessings to the tribes except Simeon, and a reference to Moses' death in Deuteronomy 34. As it relates to Simeon not being mentioned, it is worth noting the following. Simeon was dispersed into Judah, Joshua 19 verses 1 through 9. Simeon is listed first for Gerizim, the Mount of Blessings. The Simeonite prince brought back the Moabite woman in Numbers 25. The Simeon census numbers dropped significantly from Numbers 1 to Numbers 26. In Revelation 14 verses 14 through 20, two sickles reap. The first is the harvest of the earth. The second is the gathering of grapes to put into the great winepress. The harvest of the earth is the census, and the gathering of the grapes that are trodden is the vengeance on Midian. As it relates to the winepress, Isaiah 63 verses 2 through 3 says, Yahuwah troddens the winepress in Edom. Lamentations 1 verse 15 says, Yahuwah has trodden, as in a winepress, the virgin daughter of Judah. Joel 3 verse 13 says, Put in the sickle, the harvest is ripe. Go in, tread, for the winepress is full. The mention of the winepress is to draw a parallel between strong drink and the wrath of God that is then mentioned in Revelation 17 verse 6 when it says, And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of saints, the blood of martyrs of Yahushua, an echo of how the prophets that we read of today were despised and or killed by Israel after their time of prophesying had ended. As it relates to vengeance in Revelation 14, there are similarities to notice between the vengeance on Midian and what can be called the Day of Vengeance that will be discussed with respect to the events in Joshua 10, where the sun stands still for about a whole day, while the Lord of Righteousness, King of Jerusalem, is attacked by Joshua. In Numbers 31, verses 7 through 8, which covers the vengeance on Midian, it says, They warred against Midian, as Yahuwah commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of their slain. And they also killed Balaam the son of Beor with the sword. In Joshua 10 verse 5, covering the Day of Vengeance, it says, The 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. At this point, the entirety of the 7 seals has been covered. This has resulted in walking through the law alongside the book of Revelation. For the rest of the series, the book of Revelation now focuses on echoing the book of Joshua.